Hello, it's mid-April, it's a jogging trousers kind of day, and I thought, as I do still want to read about the books that I read in March, but we've already progressed on to the next month, I would talk about the 4 books that I read last month in a way that conveys how much they actually stuck in my brain. So this is not a clean review, but just a little chat about 4 books and what they did to my reading behaviour. The first book that I read was Little Women by Louisa May Alcott, which I'd never read before, and I'm quite glad that I'm able to say that I read it now. Obviously, this is the story about the 4 March sisters, very much based on Louisa May Alcott's life herself. The main character, I guess, is Jo, that is modelled after her. She is the second oldest sister of 4 who really likes to write, and I read this together with a friend over on Instagram, and it was really enjoyable reading it together as 2 adults, but funnily enough, I actually would recommend this to a young reader because I do find it sort of almost too sort of devout and sickly sweet. They are so incredibly good. Very good Christians. They just share everything and they don't have any bad thoughts, and if they do, then they feel very guilty about it. And that is just not really, you know, like a way of life that I'm going to get behind. But I did watch the movie, the newer movie last week, and I thought that was actually a really, really excellent version, especially because after reading this book, I did read into sort of Louisa May Alcott as a person, as a woman, and she actually also apparently didn't want to write things in the way that she wrote them in the end. Especially what happens to Jo is something that she didn't necessarily want to write. So yeah, I'm not gonna spoil the ending for you, but I do feel like everyone knows this book, and I would have loved to have read the version that Louisa May Alcott would have wanted to write if she hadn't been confined by the expectations of the time and what an editor thought young girls and boys would want to read about the happy end of a woman, let's just say that. But I did listen to that on audio every now and then as an audiobook, which helped me get through it a little bit, I must admit, because I also read The Obelisk Gate by N.K. Jemisin, which is the second in the Broken Earth trilogy, which is an amazing fantasy world. I have also seen this pegged as science fiction. The story takes part in a world much like ours, although we don't actually know what year we're in, where natural climate catastrophes happen, always resulting in periods of death and destruction, and mankind basically has to go through these periods of destruction and always sort of build something new. And from this world, a type of human has emerged, I guess, that can control rock. So they may be the key to salvation, but they may also be part of the problem. We don't really know. And our main character is a woman who has these skills. This is really not an easy read. The first in the trilogy and now also the second in the trilogy really took me quite long to read. It's quite complicated in the jumps in the book. Sort of the voice that we follow is sort of difficult to understand in a way. But one of my favourite things about this trilogy so far is actually our main character, because for the bulk of the book, it does switch back and forth, but for the bulk, I don't remember if her age is stated at any point, but she's probably sort of like in her maybe mid-40s, we're not quite sure. And I do feel like that is super unrepresented, especially like in science fiction or fantasy. And it is fascinating how this sort of world unfolds. Part of what makes it difficult is that it's not really explained to us. We just really dive in and then, you know, sink or swim. But yeah, I'm glad that I read this one. I do want to read the last in the trilogy. I do also have that waiting for me on my shelves, but I don't think I will get to it this month, simply because it did slow down my reading quite a bit, and I'm trying to get a little bit more traction in my reading, and I don't want to sort of fall back into sort of taking like quite like lengthy breaks, or just sort of like reading 5 pages and not getting like sucked in. So one excellent choice once I finished that book was actually to read Nothing to See Here by Kevin Wilson, which was just sort of standing on my shelf. I think I got this like at a second bookshop because I think this was recommended to me maybe in the Reading Glasses podcast that I listen to quite often. And this follows a woman who is asked by a good friend to look after her stepchildren, 2 twins who spontaneously combust. Is that what you call it if you go up in flames? And it's a really, really quick read, but it's quite lovely in its sense of found family, and how these kids don't really feel like they've been wanted and loved by anyone. And then this woman shows up who's not a very nurturing, warm person, but she does strike up this quite special bond to these 2 twins. And I just thought this was like really great, and I think I read it like in a weekend. Really quick read. My edition is the hardback with these horrible deckled edges. I've never liked them. They look fancy, but not really my jam, to be honest. It's always difficult to turn the pages. So this one, I think, is actually a book that I'm going to recommend quite a few times, as is the 4th and last book, The Vanishing Half, by Britt Bennett, which I didn't love when I started it. This is a story of 2 sisters. Is it twins again? Oh, I read 2 books about twins back to back, and I didn't realise. Twins who grow up in a sort of small town, very small community, doesn't show up on any geographic map, where this community of black people over the generations have been trying to become more and more white in appearance. And one of the 2 sisters leave this community, and one of them chooses a life where she passes as white, which comes with certain privileges, and the other leads a life as a black woman. And I think we span, what is a time frame? I think sort of 60s to 80s, something like that. So obviously this is also set in an America where you would have very obvious discrimination of a black woman, whereas now it at times is a little bit more hidden away. So the discussion here was an interesting one of how fabricated this discrimination is in a sense, and also whether it makes sense to actually try to turn away from this black identity. I actually felt like I was a strange reader for this book, because I feel like I can't really say much about some of the feelings that are portrayed here in our characters. I am white and very privileged in this sense, so at times I felt very much like I was sort of on the outside looking in whilst I was reading this book, which is not to say that this is any fault of the book, not so ever. Probably quite to the contrary. This probably pushed me to like question some of the things that I just sort of don't even question anymore. I don't know. My thoughts on this aren't very sorted, as you can see, but it's a very well crafted story, and I really liked how none of these characters are cliche, simplified caricatures. They are all very real, believable people. So just as a sort of literary feat, I think this is a really good book, and I will check out The Mothers, which is on the back of this book as well, by Britt Bennett. It's been blurbed by Bernardine Evaristo, whose Girl, Woman, Other I thought was excellent and had some similarities with the book actually. So this was a really interesting one to finish my month with. That was my reading March. It felt slow. I didn't get like super sucked into anything. Maybe Nothing to See Here, because that was really like a popcorn movie. Like, I flew through that book. I am currently in a similar mood, kind of trudging my way through books that are good and I want to finish, but nothing is like super enlightening. So let me know what are like your one sitting, quick, fast-paced, fun, thrilling, not too long books, because I need something to balance out all the rest. I hope you're doing good. Middle of the month, little check-in. That was my reading March. I'll see you very soon. Bye.